The Creator was wondering about the creation. As the story goes, now this is very anthropomorphic, but as the story goes, God asked Archangel Michael, how are the people on earth doing? Archangel Michael sort of made a grimace. And God said, send 2 angels to the earth to get a full report, and I want to meet with them tomorrow. So the next day, the first angel comes before God, and God says, how are the people on earth doing? And the angel said, well, the good news, about 10% are walking with the Spirit before them. They're alive, they're awake, they know who they are, they're connected, they're doing great things. The other 90%, unfortunately, they're still pretty much in the dark, and it's not going so well. God said, thank you. The second angel steps up, and God said, how are the people on earth doing? This angel said, well, about 10% of the people are doing great. They're walking with the Spirit before them. They're connected. They're inspired. They're doing great things. They know who they are. The other 9%, 90%, they're just lost, walking in the dark, all sorts of chaos. They're not doing really well. So God said, I'm going to send that 10% an email. And I'm going to really encourage them and inspire them so that they can inspire others. And I'm going to tell them something really important and inspiring. And do you know what was in that email? Nobody here got one? Boom. That was a joke, and I hope you got it. If not, see me after service. Did you get an email that got, were you one of the 10%? I use that because it makes sort of an interesting point. I think we're all aware that we can either walk in the awareness of the truth or who we are, or not. We can be lost and grappling in the dark. And I think all of us also are really hungry to be in communication with our Creator. How many of you, if you received an email, if you got your marching orders from the day directly from your angel or heaven or higher self, how many of you would follow what it said? Yeah, I think everybody would be happy to, if it were that clear and that simple, that we can all relate to that. Well, we've been in the midst of a fall study series, a 7-week series that is based on the Wizard of Oz. The Wizard of Oz is an archetypal story of the hero's journey. It's about being lost to come to discover something new about yourself. It's just like the prodigal son in the Bible. We've been using the book by Dr. Gene Houston, The Wizard of Us. This week we are on week 6, where we look at flying monkeys and witches and wizards and those things that we haven't yet talked about and what it means to be as a part of our spiritual journey. Now, as we began, most of you I'm sure know by now, the main character in the story we talk about is Dorothy. Dorothy in both Greek and Latin means gift of God. Yes, that Dorothy represents who we are at our essence, that we are all the gift of God, an expression of God. Dorothy has with her, ever by her side, her fearless companion, Toto. Toto comes from the Latin in toto, which means total, everything, all that is. Toto symbolizes our soul. You see, even though Toto is quite often the one that stirs up the trouble or seemingly leads Dorothy to do something she wouldn't necessarily choose to do on her own, it's something she needs to do. Toto is also fetching those situations and those things, bringing them into Dorothy's life, which she needs for her own soul's growth. We've also encountered the Scarecrow and the Tin Man and the Lion, representing wisdom and courage and strength. That's a part of who we are, that it's our very nature. And the spiritual journey is about cultivating and continually growing our wisdom, our compassion, and the courage to show up and act in ways that we would need to show up. And so last week when we left the story, Dorothy had made it through the poppy fields. Remember, the poppy fields were about falling asleep and waking up. That's a part of the spiritual journey, that there's a tendency to fall asleep, and there's an ongoing process of continually waking up. And so today, she is now, would you show me the screen? They have made it to the Emerald City, and standing in this place, when they first arrive at the Emerald City, they're first denied the opportunity to see the wizard. And then they're distracted. They're taken off to do all these other things. They're trying to be distracted. But they don't give up. They're persistent. So finally they make it, and they're standing before the wizard, or what they believe is the wizard. Jean Houston writes, "A large, luminous head rises up before our heroes amid clouds of smoke and intermittent blasts of fire. The head frowns slightly as the friends approach. This is the wizard, a seemingly divine being who speaks in a booming, echoing voice like God, saying, 'Come forward.' The disembodied head commands. All around the explosive wizard, there are images of the sacred. There's an altar, there are candles or incense burners, and what seems to be organ pipes behind him. Each of the four companions sees something fearful in the wizard that relates to him or her. The scarecrow sees the balls of fire that accompany the booming voice that could literally turn him to ash. The Tin Man sees the lack of compassion. The cowardly lion, who is frightened at the drop of a hat, sees a terrifying being who could totally consume him with its power. Dorothy sees the stern, humorless authority and the rigidity that she feared back in Kansas. They all approach the wizard with fear and trembling, and in a voice like thunder, 'I am Oz, the great and powerful. Who are you?' Dorothy answers the divine creature in a tiny voice, 'I am Dorothy, the small and the meek.'" Now, we know Dorothy means gift of God. Dorothy sees herself as, "I am Dorothy, small and meek." Can you relate to that? Can you relate to knowing yourself, as Edward said, it's like the two voices. Can you relate to knowing yourself as the small and the meek, the completely unprepared, and I am the gift of God? Where we move today is about learning to live in the paradox, that spirituality is itself a paradox, that we are like a puzzle. We already are that perfect puzzle, that perfect picture of God in expression. And we are all the pieces in the box. You see, we're both. We're coming to put ourselves together, to put the pieces together, to make sense of it. We're coming to discover who we are from the inside out, to be able to be that likeness and image of God in expression wherever we are and whatever is before us. And so today we talk about how to do that in the midst of challenges in our life. So there's a short video clip that we want to watch, but before that, would you give me the screen by Joseph Campbell? Joseph Campbell, who talked and wrote a lot about the hero's journey. How are we doing back there? Okay, thumbs down is not what I wanted to see. Okay, I'll just tell you the quote. Joseph Campbell says, "It is by going down into the abyss that we recover the treasures of our life. Where you stumble, there lies your treasure." And so the video clip, are we going to be able to see the video clip, Mike? Okay, are we there? No. Okay, all right. He's working his way to a video clip. So they've left the wizard. They had to make a decision. I'm Dorothy, the meek and the small. Now they ask the wizard, will he give them what they want? And the wizard says, yes, I'll grant your wish under one condition. Now right off the bat, right here, we know that this wizard does not represent God, the Creator. Because God, the Creator, never says, you have to prove to me who you are. Did you hear what I said? Your worthiness is not self-generated. Your worthiness is source-originated. Isn't that beautiful? I was journaling when that day just flowed through. Your worthiness is not self-generated. Your worthiness is source-originated. So they're growing in their understanding of God and power, and where do they place their spiritual power? So this wizard places a condition on it. I'll give you what you want under one condition. Do you remember what he asks? Bring back the broomstick of the wicked witch of the West. Now, this witch has been harassing them and chasing them the whole time at every turn. And so to bring back the broomstick of the wicked witch of the West is basically like a suicide mission. It's an impossible mission, an impossible task. And so they have to make the decision, do we stay in Oz and just set up camp here? Or do we put it all on the line and go for it? Now, how many of you, like me, have spent a little time in Oz, bought a few years, bought some property, decorated it, really tried to be at home, in Oz, all the while knowing you had to get out there and do whatever it was you felt like you probably couldn't do. So they finally make the decision, we're going to put it all on the line and we're going to go for it. Do we have the clip now? Thank you.
I'd turn back if I were you. I believe there's spooks around here.
That's ridiculous. Spooks. That's silly.
Don't you believe in spooks?
No. Why, oh!
Are you all right? I do believe in spooks. 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 I do.
Okay, so as a kid, that's basically where I wanted to run out of the room. It got scary. It starts to get scary there. Now, there's a really important, I think, thing worth saying here. Oftentimes in New Thought, I think, unfortunately, there's so much emphasis on the positive that we tend to not talk about enough the whole picture. That life does include challenges, yes? That evil things do happen in the world. That we do find ourselves stuck and don't know why it happens and don't know how to get beyond it. And fear and our capacity to be present to fear and these things that we call darkness, that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today, because it is really important to realize it is absolutely a part of the human experience. And I think it's time we talk about it even more, because anything we bury, guess what? We bury alive. It comes back to find us, and whatever we're trying to suppress is going to come up. And I believe that there's a balancing right now in our world that is saying you need to pay attention to some of these things, these fears, these challenges, these dark places, this shadow side in your own self, held in the context of light. That's what we're grappling with today. So sometimes when we find ourselves in these places, I don't know if you noticed it or paid attention, but you probably, if you think about it, there was no yellow brick road anymore. They have now found themselves on their spiritual journey. So do you believe you can be on your spiritual journey and find yourself lost, afraid, and in the dark? Yeah. When we face challenges, when the road we were on has disappeared, no longer a familiar path or any path to follow, when we're walking in the midst of fear and uncertainty, we feel like what is before us is useless or absolutely next to impossible. What are we doing, we ask ourselves? Why are we here? Have we done something wrong? Does a spiritual life include this on purpose? Now, I wrote this for us today. This is what came through for us. Does a spiritual life include this on purpose? And if so, what purpose could it possibly serve? Have you ever had your road or the path that you were on fade away and eventually go completely out of sight? No longer a path to one step to even tell you where to go. Okay, 3 of us. Anybody else? Okay. Have you ever felt like what was in front of you was useless or next to impossible? What about found yourself in the midst of fear and uncertainty? And have you asked yourself, what did I do? How did I get here? And it's in those places, sometimes people say, well, what happened to God is good all the time, God is good. That we don't know how to reconcile that. We think it's an either or rather than a both and. That there's a reality that's big enough to include all of that. And we begin to feel like that, what have I done wrong? I often use the analogy of childbirth. If going through pain were wrong, none of us would be here. There's a lot of pain involved in childbirth, but that's very essential that that process take place. There's both pleasure and pain involved in that. Neither of those are good or bad. They're an essential part of the process. But we tend to ask ourselves, have we done something wrong? Well, sometimes we do bring challenges on ourselves. We know that. We reap what we sow. How many of you can say, yes, I've done that, I know that. I did X and I got this in return and I know I did it. So we're not saying that this is about excusing yourself or sticking your head in the ground. We're not saying that because we know that at times what we do, we can clearly see created this. But there's sometimes we just don't know what created it. Sometimes the challenges before us are not the result of our mistake or unproductive choices. It's not about a right turn or a wrong turn that we made or did not make. Rather, sometimes the challenges before us are there as a means to grow and evolve us. To help us discover something new about who we are. To help us discover something more about where and what God is. To help us discover more about how life operates in us and through us and as us. That living with uncertainty and being present to fear are part of life. Now see, there's a difference in being present to fear and being consumed by fear. That's the huge difference. You can be present to your fear and yet not be carried away with it, not buy into the story. You can be present to the facts. This is happening in my life. I lost my job, my this, my that. I have this diagnosis. And the truth still is, I am an expression of an infinite God. All things are possible in God. It's learning to hold both of those so that the truth can bear upon the facts of your life and greater things can be experienced and expressed. And so when we have to face it, to do it, to deal with it, to go through it, to experience, we learn something. We learn something about ourselves. That's how potential is developed. But so often we go to, well, what happened? Why did I do this wrong? Can you relate to that? I've even had ministers tell me, I had a minister, well, you just recently had the Canuga conference, and we were talking about a number of Unity ministers that had were sick or had died, and this particular minister said, you know, I just thought that the work we're doing, we would be protected. I thought, oh, okay. That, you know, be with those thoughts and see how that works for you. That's the whole story of Job in the Bible. Job thought if I do everything right, I'll be protected and nothing ever happened to me. Well, that's not how life works. How do we learn unless we go through it? In the Gospel of John, the disciples had the same question. As Jesus was walking along, he saw a blind man from birth. Rabbi, his disciples said, why is this man blind born? Was it the result of his own sin? The disciples are saying, was this man's karma? They said, or was it the result of his parents' sin? Was it group karma? This is what Jesus said, neither. Neither. And that neither is to, don't even think that way, neither. It is to demonstrate the power of God. That whatever is before you is to demonstrate and to bring out what you're made of. What are you made of? God. How do you demonstrate what you're made of? You bring it out. Every situation that calls forth something in you, you bring it out. Jesus said, but to demonstrate the power of God, all of us must quickly carry out the task assigned us by the one who sent me, or the one who sent us. For there is little time left before the night falls, and all work comes to an end. Now, this last line to me is beautiful. While I am still in the world, I give it my light. What if everything that was in front of us, if we could see it as that it's for us, for our personal growth and spiritual transformation? That no matter what is before me, rather than getting caught up in the story and in the drama, whatever is before me, I'm supposed to respond in a way that says, this is for my personal growth and spiritual transformation, and I will give it my light. I'm not going to give it my story. I'm not going to give it my reasons and my excuses. I'm not going to give it anything else. I will give it my light. And my light is my life force. And as I give it my light and my life force, that's how I come to discover more in me. And as I change, the world around me changes. And so when we look at why do these things happen in our life, the first thing has to do with just that, with realizing that it's about transformation. Did any of you notice what the lion was carrying in that last clip? Would you show us a butterfly net? Now see, this is a clue. The lion has never carried a butterfly net before, but the lion, now that they're going into the dark night of the soul, they're going down into the abyss, the lion, the part that represents our strength, is carrying a butterfly net. A butterfly net represents transformation. What is taking place here is about my spiritual growth and transformation. That this is for my own soul's evolution. That's the first powerful clue to realize that this is about transformation. And sometimes when things happen in our life, we get so stuck on why. Why is this happening? And it's just as Jesus responded, don't go there. I mean, you definitely should ask yourself the question, see what you're supposed to do, but maybe I should say, don't get stuck there. There's something called metaphysical malpractice. You can beat yourself up. You can spend so much time saying, what did I do to bring this on me? I've heard people actually say, like if a person said, will you hold me in prayer? I just discovered I've got a kidney thing. I've heard a person say, oh, that represents so-and-so. What are you doing in your so-and-so? That's called metaphysical malpractice. It's about holding each other in the light, and if the person can figure that out themselves, amen? We each have our own guidance system and can ask. Now, if you go to a person and you're asking and you're seeking and they guide you along, that's all well and good. I'm not saying that we don't probe into it, but I'm saying that I believe we poo-poo on each other when we do that. Let's stop it. Don't even go there. See them as the light of God. So it's about transformation. We know that that's how we bring forth our potential. When I was about 10 years old, I'm 18 months older than my sister. So she was 8 and a half, I was about 10. It was the summer, our parents went to the beach of North Carolina, we went on vacation. My mother would go with her two sisters, so I had my cousins there. There were a little group of us. We loved it. We'd go to the beach and rent a place and spend the week. Well, had been out at the beach, but now we were going to go to the pool. So the four of us, my sister and I and my two cousins who were a little older, we got our swimsuits on and we were going downstairs first. And the adults said, don't get in the pool. Wait till we get down there. Okay. So we all run down. I don't know exactly how it happened, but we all four wound up in the deep end of the pool. Now was a problem because neither my sister nor I could swim. My two cousins could swim a little bit. So here we are all frolicking in like 12 feet of water. They're trying to help us. They can't, so we stand on them. That doesn't help anything. But one of them would come and I could climb up them long enough to get a gasp of air and then go back down. So the four of us, it was just this tumbling mess. The onlookers probably thought there's a bunch of obnoxious children just scrambling in the pool. I thought I was going to die. It was horrible. I couldn't breathe. finally, I'll never forget the feeling when someone hands grabbed me around my waist and just took off, and all of a sudden I was up for air, and they put me off to the side, and I just fell over and started crying. Then my little sister got plopped up there, and she started crying. About that time, my mother came down. It was not pretty. She's like, what happened? And when she finds out we were in the pool and we almost drowned, she said, as soon as we get home, you are taking swimming lessons. That didn't sound so bad, I didn't think. Well, then she signed us up, and it was for like children like 3 to 13. So I'm 10. Everybody else in the class is 3, 4, 5, 6 maybe. Well, that was embarrassing. I was the biggest person and couldn't swim, and there's these little kids. So all of a sudden, I start getting irritated. I'm afraid I can't do it. And I go home, and I tell my mother, the chlorine stinks. I don't like the teacher. I made up all this drama. Have you ever noticed when you don't want to do something, you're good at creating drama? All these reasons I couldn't do this and shouldn't have to do this. My mother would not hear of it. You're going religiously. She took us to those lessons. And I was so afraid as we got that little piece of foam and had to put our arms out and start kicking. But with a little piece of foam and a lot of encouragement and some making me go, I little by little learned to swim. And then I realized that in order to finish that class, the last day, we were going to have to go to the deep end and dive in. Well, of course, that brought up all my fears. So by then I knew my mother was not going to just let me go, so I decided I would play sick that day. Well, a mother being what a mother is, knew about it all and insisted, and I was in the back of the car, I'm sick, you're going to kill me. Now my mother's a very compassionate woman, but it was just horrible. And at the time as a child, I thought she was mean and I couldn't see it. Can all of you recall being in a situation like that? And you see, I can clearly see today why that was about my own growth and development. And through the process, I learned how to swim, but I had to get in over my head, and I had to face some fears, and I had to literally learn to do something that prior to that I didn't know how to do. So it is on the spiritual journey. It never stops. It's not just about swimming lessons. Whatever is in your life, it's calling you to get in over your head so you can discover that you can do something you didn't know you could. You can stand up and publicly speak. You can tell the person the truth. You can quit that addiction. You can do whatever it is you're being called to do. That's what the butterfly net, it's all about compassion and transformation. And what tends to happen is we get stuck in the why. And if there's any resistance or any obstacle, we feel like we shouldn't do it, or maybe I'm doing the wrong thing. Again, I think in New Thought, we tend to be sometimes, we feel like, oh, well, it didn't happen. That must be God's will. I tried. I tried one time. I went to the bank and asked for that loan, and they said, no, thank you. Do you know all the great people that have accomplished great things, how many times they heard no? It's about finding the fortitude within and saying, whatever it is that feels like resistance. And so in the spiritual context, this is where we need to look at what we call evil. And in this movie, the witch and the flying monkeys and all of these scary things, what are they about and what do they symbolize? The wicked witch wants to be in complete control and feels completely separate from her good or her God. The wicked witch believes everything is up to her. She has to conjure things up, use force. She has to struggle to get the results that she wants. She uses trickery, mean-spiritedness, intimidation, threats, and fear. Anything to make her world the way she needs to have it in order to feel safe and strong and in control. She's the wicked witch. We would never act that way, would we? Believe everything is up to you, conjure things up, use force, struggle to get results. The wicked witch is a personification of our sense of separation and our misdirected creative power for selfish or self-serving purposes. It's believing that we have to do things alone, or believing that we're separate and therefore I'm going to fight for my well-being and only my well-being. And it's about realizing that there's one power and one presence. In Romans 13:1 says, there is no power but of God. There's one power and one presence. But I use the example, just as there is with electricity, this power can be used for purposes of good to illuminate this building, or this power can be used to destroy this building. That which we call good and evil needs a body, needs hands, needs a mind to carry it out in this world. Amen? That what we call good and evil is really our willingness to show up in one way or another. It's which voice are we feeding, which spirit are we giving into. Charles Fillmore said he wrote in 1895 in a magazine article, "You mistake our teaching if you think we deny seeming evil. What you do deny is that evil has principle back of it. It does not come from God. Man creates it. Hence, it is not permanent and has not power except what we give it." I use the analogy of two rooms. If you had two rooms side by side with an adjoining door that's closed, this room is filled with light. This room has no light at all, completely dark. The minute you open the door, what happens? The light spills into this room. The opposite does not happen. The darkness does not spill into the light. There's one power, one presence. There is light, and there is the absence of light. What we call evil is the absence of the awareness of the power and presence of God. It's doing things unconsciously. It's believing that it's me against you. That's what's being healed in our world now. The wicked witch reminds us that we choose how we use our life force, our creative power, to hurt or to heal for purposes of good or evil. And just as we recognize in the characters things such as compassion and wisdom and courage, we recognize Dorothy as an expression of God, we must also recognize our life force and our capacity to show up in ways that are either hurtful or helpful. To feel a sense of separation and brokenness. The wicked witch also serves to remind us of how we may want to label other people or things as evil. We may want to ostracize or demonize a person or a group for their actions. But what we must always do is separate the behavior for the brother or sister who is acting out. The behavior may result in evil, but every being is a Dorothy, is a gift of God. It's like I told you a story one time about an individual that I saw really doing something that I thought was hurtful. And he had on a particular shirt that to me was projecting hate. And it disturbed me. It brought up all kinds of disgust, anger, feelings that I would like to say I don't have, but I do. They come up sometimes. And when those things come up, I go within and I sit with it and I find out, what is this about? What is in me? And the gift that came through was the Spirit spoke to me and said, you have to learn to separate the shirt from the man. You have to learn to separate the behavior from the being. And so that's the gift of being present to our fear, being present to our feeling disgusted and angry and all of these things, is to find the message. What is it that I need to learn about this so I can separate the shirt from the man, the behavior from the woman or the individual? They finally are in the crux of this particular movie, and I want to show you one more short clip.
The last to go. We'll see the first three go before her. And her mangy little dog, too. How about a little fire, Scarecrow?
No! 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 I'm burning! That's burning!
Go through that water! You cursed brat! Look what you've done! I'm melting! Melting! Oh, what a world! What a world! Who would have thought a good little girl like you could destroy my beautiful wickedness? Ah, look out! Look out! I'm going! Oh, oh.
She's dead. You killed her.
I didn't mean to kill her. Really, I didn't.
It's just that he was on fire.
Hail to Dorothy! The Wicked Witch is dead!
Hail! Hail to Dorothy! The Wicked Witch is dead!
The broom. May we have it?
Please, and take it with you.
Oh, thank you so much. Now we can go back to the wizard and tell him the Wicked Witch is dead.
Richard, would you give me the song? So the final point for today is held here. When the water melts the witch, water represents the water of life, that it's only this life force that is real, and this which appears to be evil in the presence of that cannot stand. But when they asked Dorothy, why did you do this? She says, I didn't mean to kill the witch. I was helping my friend. You see, this is letting your life force shine. She was standing up, putting herself out there, doing something good. She was doing an action out of compassion, out of courage, out of love. And when she did that, it was in and through that the evil was there no more. You see, it's about focusing. It's not that we're not present to that and dealing with that. The Fillmores in the 1930s, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore in the late 1800s, they both experienced healings. They created this place in Kansas City called Unity Village. They used to call it the farm. They were vegetarians and they farmed stuff, and they wanted it to be a place where people of all religions could come and study and be part of a philosophy of unity, of oneness, no matter the denomination. And so they were adamant about education and prayer and publicity, publishing. But in the 1930s, the Great Depression hit. And during that time, they were in the midst of building on 1,400 acres, this great place that today we know as Unity Village. In the Great Depression, people were committing suicide. People were going hungry. Horrible things were happening. What did Charles Fillmore do? He sat down and wrote a book titled Prosperity. I believe he probably did that because he really needed to center his own self in what he believed to be true, what he knew. He said, outer circumstances cannot affect you unless you let them. It's like Eleanor Roosevelt said, all the water in the world cannot drown you unless it gets inside of you. He said, the spiritual substance is never depleted. It's always right with you all the time in response to your faith in it. The inexhaustible resources of spirit is equal to every demand. But see, writing that book and holding those truths, he also had to make some changes. They had to stop building for a while during the Great Depression. But you see, that's not evidence that he did anything wrong. Perhaps that's evidence that he did exactly what he needed to do. It's about holding the paradox, saying, when life happens and change is required, I will respond in the way I'm guided to respond. If I need to stop building, if I need to start building for a while, I'll do that. But I'm going to sit down and focus on the inexhaustible presence and power of God is still here, no matter what. And I'm going to focus on doing good, and I'm going to do all the good I know how to do. And it wasn't very long afterwards, they started building again. And went on to build a beautiful place that today is still a headquarters for Unity. I think if you look at the landscape of your life, you're being called into another level of spiritual maturity that says it's time for you to hold and embrace the paradox. It is not an either or, it's a both and. You don't wait until everything is perfect to stand on your faith. You don't wait until you're completely ready to step out and take the first step. You don't wait until all the evil and the flying monkeys and the things settle down. You focus and you do good. The 23rd Psalm says, thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies, not in the absence of. That it's in the presence of my jumping in that pool over my head, that's where we learn how to swim. And so our invitation this week is an invitation to prayer. Back to prayer. To really connect with the light that is in and to say, whatever is before me, I'm going to tune in and I will shine my light. I want to lead you in a song by Daniel Nahmod that says, when I pray, When I pray, I feel my heart grow deeper, my heart go deeper into my God. When I pray, I feel my